How China has created a new blockade for US. What is India's part in it? How India is falling between this new magnet war. What India needs to be managed and how it needs to be done. A quiet war is unfolding, and this time it is not about oil or land, it is about magnets. China has asked India for reassurance that the rare earth magnets coming from China to India will not land in US. And the reason behind is nothing but the China-US rivalry. But the problem here lies as the challenge for India, that how will India balance both with the addressal of imports in terms of rare earth magnets. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and today we are going to understand that why China is asking for such an assurance for India, what is China's dominance when we are talking about rare earth magnets, and what are the implications not just on India but also the geopolitical triangle that lies in front of us. So let us start with understanding that what exactly are rare earth magnets. Rare earth magnets are nothing but permanent magnets which are made using rare earth elements such as neodymium, dysprosium, terbium and samarium. The main essence of these permanent magnets, also known as rare earth magnets, REM, is that they are used and they are very essential for EV motors and batteries, wind turbines, defense and aerospace tech, and smartphones and electronics. In short, they are a very essential requirement when we are talking about the renewable energy sector, EV sector, and electronic sector itself. That means they will form the foundational basis of any given economy in terms of economic growth that is required in these sectors. The reason they are known as rare earth magnets, not because they are present in scarce quantity, but they are limited in terms of mining. It is very complex and refining. And this is exactly what gives the edge to China, where they have the dominance in the mining as well as refining. Now this clearly highlights that these are small components but with mighty importance, and they are needed by each and every economy, included US and India. Now let us understand that how China has dominance and monopoly over rare earth magnets. So when we are talking about the rare earth magnets, 90% of global supply comes from China itself. The reason being very similar, because they are very difficult to mine. It's not that they are present in scarce quantity across the globe. It is very technologically difficult to mine, as well as refining is a difficult process. Even if it is being mined in other parts of the globe, यहाँ पर processing और refining जो है इन stages के लिए चाइना जो है जाना जाता है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर आप रेयर अर्थ एलिमेंट्स की बात करेंगे तो यहाँ पे रेयर अर्थ एलिमेंट्स जो है ऑस्ट्रेलिया में प्रोडक्शन है, बट प्रोसेसिंग के लिए हमेशा यहाँ पे चाइना के पास ही एक्सपोर्ट किया जाता है. और इसी मोनोपोली को चाइना जो है, चाइना यूजेस दिस वेरी मोनोपोली as a bargaining chip in trade dispute. A classic example would be when in the start of the year, President Donald Trump started with his tariffs. The first response that China gave was the export ban in terms of critical minerals to US, and this export ban was nothing short of 100%. So this is where China uses its monopoly to get things in its favor, and it has done it in past as well. Another example that we have seen, that China stopped directly publishing any sort of export data for specific countries. So China is going to use this mighty small product in its favor. So basically China's dominance gives it like OPEC like power. The way OPEC controls the oil, can you tell me in the comment section what is OPEC? OPEC. What is OPEC? So the way OPEC controls oil, similarly China is dominating rare earth elements as well as rare earth magnet supply, and it is the main party which gets to decide to whom it will supply at what cost it will supply, or it will supply or not. In this scenario, a new thing that has come to the front, that China has agreed to supply to India, but in this they have placed a condition that whatever supply in terms of rare earth magnets, they need a proper assurance in terms of export control, so that whatever they are giving to India, it should be only used domestically. There should not be any kind of re-export. That means India is buying from China and then India is exporting to US. That shouldn't be done, and there should be a proper certified non-use in weapons of any mass destruction. Now, this agreement that China wants, the signed agreement, the signed reassurance promise that China wants, it is very similar to Wassenaar norms. We will be talking about Wassenaar agreement as well, but this is the main highlight where China is using its dominance to decide that who will use the rare earth magnets. That means India can use, but India is not allowed to do what it wants with it on its own. It will be China. China is allowing the use for domestic purposes. It cannot be exported to US, and it cannot be used in any sort of weapons of mass destruction. Now, that means the control still lies with China. Now, in this situation, what India has done, let us look into that. So, what India has done, as of now, India has not agreed to this, but the challenge remains, because at present our EV sector is still facing a supply constraint that needs to be addressed if we want proper growth in this particular sector. Apart from this, if we talk about the non-agreement from India's end, even after that, because EV sector is strained, the firms have gone ahead and issued end user certificate that okay, we will be the end user of the rare earth magnet, confirming the peaceful use. So, it has gone into the motion because these sectors need the rare earth magnets, but it has not been officially confirmed from end of India. In this scenario, there has been another development where we see that two-wheeler makers are already switching to lighter magnets, but if we look at larger EVs, they are still facing performance losses without these REMs. So, in this situation, India is placed in a tug of war between US and China, and India has to very strategically balance its industrial performance as well and strategic autonomy as well, because India cannot afford to put all its egg in one basket, that is with China, and especially with a country like China, such dependence could be very risky and very costly in the coming future. Now, let us move ahead and understand what was Wassenaar norm that was talking about, why we are comparing the conditions placed by China to Wassenaar agreement. Wassenaar agreement is basically a framework. At present, it has 42 nations, and this framework is related to responsible dual use technology exports. That means if the exports are taking place, especially in terms of technology, they can be used for civilian also, military use also, but there has to be a proper responsibility that needs to be taken, and India has been its member since 2017. But the notable point here is China has never been its member, and China asking for a similar agreement from India in the context of REM is nothing but hypocrisy and the idea of having a strategic control that the leakage should not occur to its adversary, that is US. All in all, we are seeing that we are in middle of a geopolitical triangle between US, China and now India, where China wants to make sure that it has the monopoly and US does not have any sort of access, and that is why it has tightened export control and it is using all the political leverage that it has. US wants to make sure that it has diverse sources and there is a proper secure supply so that the EV production goes on in the usual manner, and that is why it is already diversifying imports and it is also strategically building domestic capacity. So, when we are talking about China, China is all about maintaining monopoly and making sure that there is no sort of US access directly or indirectly. For that, they have tightened the export control and they have used all the political leverage they have. If we talk about US only wants to reduce its dependency on China in terms of exports it has. US is trying to do this with all the countries, but US has to realize that it is heavily dependent on China, especially when we are talking about critical minerals, rare earth minerals. And it is already forming alliances and looking to diverse its sources, be it India, Japan or Australia. And in this scenario, India needs to balance both of these countries, also secure supply and expand EV production, because that is very essential for our net zero goal that is set for 2070. In this context, we need to diversify the imports and also at the same time build the domestic capacity. Now, in this scenario, India cannot afford to let go of China. India cannot afford to let go of US. The only need is a strategic balancing between China and US and not letting go of the domestic capability expansion. Now let us look at the implications for India. India can have all sort of implications: economic, strategic and diplomatic. When we are talking about economic implication, if supply disruptions continue, they directly threaten the EV manufacturing targets that we have in place. The increased cost as well as import dependency is going to affect the economic numbers, as well as we will have a slower progress on green transition goals that we have placed on us. If we talk about strategic implications, this clearly brings us in a highly vulnerable place when we are talking about supply chains. It is also going to test India's strategic autonomy when there is a direct rivalry between US and China and we are being placed in between the fire, and it will also come as an opportunity in form of crisis where we might be able to accelerate our domestic mining as well as refining. At the same time, it is an opportunity on the diplomatic front where we need to further expand our partnerships, not just under Quad but other alliances as well, and go for a balanced diplomacy where we are not compromising on the cooperation either with US or with China, because in recent times this is the closest we have come towards China in terms of trade and partnership, and we wouldn't want to let go of and go to the hostile times that we have seen with China, especially since 2017. Because in the 21st century tech rivalry, REMs are going to assume the place of usual weapons, and in this situation it becomes very important for India to read on to the implications, understand the crisis and opportunity in there, and work well in time towards solutions that can bring better capabilities for EV sector, better mining and refining work for REEs and REMs. And how that can be done? That can be done by starting with diversification of supply chain, building better domestic mining to magnet complete ecosystem so that there is least amount of dependency on external sources, creating strategic mineral reserves, especially for situations like these when there are tariff wars going on left, right and center, and strengthening cooperation with like-minded countries which have shown regular cooperation, especially when we talk about Japan, when we talk about Australia. Now at this point, I will leave you with a practice question. You can put down the answers in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.